River Road, Northeast Neighbors, Good Pasture, Jefferson West Side, Whitaker, Train Song, Harlow. I think I left one or two out. So I represent almost all of North Eugene, and the part of North Eugene roughly east of River Road neighborhood once you're above Beltline Road. I also go all the way down into the downtown area, and the Train Song and Whitaker area, of course, in the southern part down there. So it's a large area of this part of the city. When I have to describe it in just one short phrase to colleagues or to a statewide or regional group, I just say, I represent primarily North and downtown Eugene. That's the shorthand way of describing it. So I represent Eugene in the state government. I've been elected from a couple of years ago was my most recent election. And let's see, I've been doing this for a number of years now. So there are some faces on here I know I've already talked with a number of times, like Kate, Jerry, and Dawn, and some others of you. And some of you are new to me tonight. I want to explain first this picture that I selected for my background tonight. It was taken in the far North Eugene area. I thought it was a pretty good representation of the season. And this is the stuff that I think is making me congested and making me clear my throat and blow my nose. Because we're moving into yet a different kind of an allergy season now. But it's just so beautiful. I love watching the change of the seasons. And this to me represented just nature. It's just in an untended area where I was taking a walk, and I thought, oh my gosh, you know, take some, instead of taking time to smell the roses, it was more like take time to look at the detail of the wonderful vegetation around me. So I was invited to give you an update about some state business. The past few months of constituent work for me have been almost entirely me, along with my legislative aides, helping people claim the unemployment benefits that they had earned, and also watching the COVID-19 response, the cases and the testing, and monitoring the fire situation. The last couple of weeks, however, were a flurry of activity because any of us who are elected representatives right now have the opportunity to submit ideas for legislation for the next legislative session. So I've been working on some, it's called bill concepts, if you're into the lingo there. That's some insider lingo. For tonight, I prepared information to give you a quick overview of last week's economic and revenue forecast, a wrap up of what's going on with the fire season, and what I'm working on related to fighting the pandemic, and then a few odds and ends at the end. So I'll start with the wildfire season. The Office of Emergency Management sent us an update on September 25th, and they send updates just about every day, and I looked real quickly today and updated my numbers. There have been statewide 9 fatalities, and there are still 9 missing persons. The number of sheltered persons reported by the American Red Cross is now at 2,395. Those are people who cannot return to their home, 2,395. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, has registered 6,221 people for assistance. And as of today, they've already authorized $13.2 million for those individuals. Of the number of residences destroyed, it's 3,124 residences. That's over 1,000 single-family homes, 197 multifamily homes, and almost 2,000 manufactured homes are gone, and another 1,403 structures. The state, the way they keep track of large fires, astonishingly, by the time of the Labor Day fire period, there were 17 major fires. You know, there are fires all over the state, all the time during the season, but 17 major fires. It is down to only 6 major fires. Now, a number of us, I think, have the impression that the fire season is under control now that the rains have come, but there are still 6 active major fires, including the Holiday Farm fire. There were 39 different states and some Canadian provinces who have contributed firefighters and firefighting resources to fight along with us in Oregon. And about 1 million acres has been burned since the start of this year. That is nearly double the annual average. When you average all the fires over the last 10 years, including a few years ago, you know, there was the Chetco Bar fire. Some of you know about the horrible fires that were up in the Columbia Gorge area. In any of those years, once you take the average of the last 10, we're already at over double the average. So it's pretty astonishing and shocking the devastating impacts on the entire state. In Lane County, I have some information from Alex Kyler about the Holiday Farm fire, the one closest to us, and you may have friends or family who have been involved with that fire. There are no persons missing as of this time. There was one confirmed fatality. 413 homes were destroyed and 25 commercial sites, including some businesses that you may be familiar with. If any of you have heard of or purchased McKinsey Mist water, their facility is gone. That was up in Blue River. The fire perimeter, the perimeter around the Holiday Farm fire is 260 miles. That is a gigantic fire. And as they explained to us, there will be crews working that fire for months. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to see a video that's now posted on YouTube. There are a number of people very eager to get back to their neighborhood or back to their area to check out their house. There are still active underground fires happening. The duff and tree roots are burning, and there's a very stark, frightening video of a fire. Maybe Dawn knows about it because I saw Dawn nodding her head. It's well over 1,000 degrees, the temperature of the fire that's burning underground, but there's kind of a hole where you can see it from, it's on a slope. So it's like looking into a little cave. And it's almost like looking into an oven or a kiln where you're firing ceramics. It's so hot and burning orange. Emergency communications upriver are still a challenge. I know Verizon had put in a temporary facility. They're doing everything they can. Just a week before the fire, maybe 10 days, I had been up to the McKinsey Discovery Center on the McKenzie River. It's the site of the old Leeburg Fish Hatchery. I had been up there getting a briefing on their plans for their new Discovery Center. It is now turned into a McKinsey Recovery Center, and they are hosting a number of different organizations, community organizations, as well as FEMA and some other public groups. They're hosting them on their site to try to run some emergency operations out of the McKinsey Discovery Center. So I'm going to move on now to COVID-19 because we had a pandemic that was really at the forefront of our thoughts before the Labor Day fires started. And now we turn our attention back to COVID-19. You know, the news is not good. When Oregon Health Authority published a news report last Friday, so it's several days old, they had an interesting summary of what's been going on around the state. And I thought this might help put things in perspective for some of you. They won't give me the name of the counties because they say it could violate confidentiality. Uh, but you can make your own guesses. One county has 13 cases associated with 4 university outbreaks, including a Greek house and 3 athletic teams. Another county has 22 cases associated with 3 university outbreaks, including 2 Greek houses and a large back-to-school party. Another county has an outbreak that now includes, well, as of last week, 19 cases. I think it's a couple more as of today. It started with a small group that met for a prayer session, and then some members of the prayer group also participated in a sewing group. And one of the household members has now died. None of the people in the prayer group or sewing group were wearing masks, as they self-reported. The cases range in age from very young children to people in their 80s. And then finally, there's a company that had an employee Labor Day party, and now 6 employees have tested positive for COVID. So what this is telling us is that we can't let up and think everything's okay. Just as you've been hearing about, cases are rising. It really is important to be wearing face masks and doing the social distancing, because the cases are rising very rapidly, and it's not just about college. Although here at the University of Oregon, I'm getting some briefings from them. All of the state representatives and senators are getting the briefings. They have developed a new saliva test that has now been approved by the federal government. So this is great. The researchers and faculty at the U of O have developed a now approved successful saliva test. That will make things much easier. The UO does testing for any of the students who are returning to occupy a residence hall. And then between 3 and 10 days after that, they do a second test. Between September, let's see, what were the dates? Let me look at my notes. 18th and 20th, the university conducted 720 or so tests of people without symptoms, students without symptoms, but they did the routine testing, and they found only 1 positive case. So that's really good news. And if you figure out the rate was 0.14%. That means way less than 1%. So that put the university's testing at actually lower than the county rate. So this isn't all about university students, but still they're doing a lot of routine testing to make sure that they nip things in the bud and close it down if anything's discovered. Close down the mingling of the person or persons who were involved. Another thing I think you might be interested to hear about is there have been the outbreaks in the long-term care facilities. As of a date last week, it's been a week ago now, there were cases at 30 nursing facilities, 49 assisted living or residential care facilities, and 20 adult foster homes. And the analysis, which makes sense to me, is since these are people who are not leaving the premises because they're in long-term care, the virus is being brought into them by the people who work in the facilities. Another thing that was interesting to me, and I wish I could give you better news, well, first let me give you some good news, I guess. There are 534 facilities that are looked over by the agency's Department of, or the Division of Aging and People with Disabilities. over 78%, let's say roughly 80% of all of the nursing, assisted living, and residential care facilities in Oregon have now completed baseline testing of all of the residents. So that was really, really good. And the reason they weren't able to complete the rest is because, and here's the bad news, a number of facilities had to be evacuated because of the wildfires. And that was a really scary situation. In some cases, overnight, in the middle of the night, residents were being bundled up and put into vans or buses and moved out to an emergency facility to house them. There were 60 different facilities that were either evacuated or the plans were in place to evacuate them. Since then, the agency has had to move them back in, the ones who were moved out. So between the wildfire and COVID-19, you can imagine on these state agencies, it's been working 24/7, and it's been really tough on all the people there to try to just keep people safe. So that leads me to something I wanted to report to you, something that I'm working on. One of the things I feel really strongly about is that PPE and testing, unless you do testing and get your results back within a few hours or a day, it really reduces the effectiveness of doing contact tracing. Because if people get their test results back 5 or 6 or astonishingly 10 days later, look at everyone they've had contact with in that time. So I'm just astonished about the situation. And I am working with a colleague who is a retired Air Force officer and very familiar with emergency planning. We're working together on a concept that we are trying to convince the state legislature to consider sooner rather than later. And basically it's saying Oregon has to take care of itself. We cannot depend on the federal government, which totally let down not just Oregon, but all the states. There was not a stockpile of resources. They were basically depending on China, one single country. And when that didn't happen, well, anyway, I'm working with my colleague, the retired Air Force officer, on a proposal for PPE and testing, and also how to provide the right kind of incentives that won't cost Oregon an arm and a leg, but the right kind of incentives to get Oregon businesses involved in providing us with this stuff, not only for right now, because we need it right now, but what's the next emergency going to be? You know, there's SARS. Some of you have been in Oregon long enough to remember when Rajneeshpuram happened, and there was the salmonella poisoning at a salad bar in the Columbia Gorge. That was an experiment to see if it would work. Well, what if that bacteria had been introduced into a dozen different salad bars in a dozen different counties around the state? We would need to rely on a stockpile of emergency resources. So that's what we're working on. I don't know how much, you probably don't want me talking much longer. I can give you some economic forecast information or budget information if you want. But instead, you might like to ask me questions. I'll leave it up to the moderator.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm not a great moderator. Anyway, I was going to say, if you are new to Zoom, we want you to use the raise hand function, and you find that by moving your cursor around at the bottom of your screen, and when it comes up to participants, click on that, and it'll give you like a screen on the right-hand side of your oh boy. Correct? Is that where you're going to find it? Yes. You're going to find the option to raise hand there. And then if you click that, I'll get to see that your hand is raised, and I'll be sure to call on you to speak. So the first person with their hand raised is Mary Leontovich.
Hi, I'd really like to ask about some of the economic stuff. I'm curious if you have any numbers of how many people in Oregon are at risk of being losing their homes.
Oh.
And also I'm curious about what's the unemployment picture? How many people have lost their jobs? What do we see coming down the road for them as far as what might happen as other people losing their homes or other people getting evicted or just not being able to eat?
Right, yes. Food insecurity is a huge issue right now. Food banks are being slammed hard. Yes, thank you for asking about that. The U.S. Small Business Administration reports to us, they've been approving loans. Apparently it's over $2 billion, but of course that's loans going to business. For individuals, there is a tiny bit of good news. The unemployment rate, I don't have the numbers right now in front of me, but the unemployment rate is actually improving right now. In July, it was over 10% in Lane County. You may know that. That was a large, not as big as it has been. The rate, unemployment rate in July 2009, that was when there was another very big recession, but that was a structural recession. This was just because of a self-imposed, we need to close things down because of a virus. In the previous recession, the unemployment rate was 12.9%. The unemployment rate in July was 10.3%, and remarkably, it is now down to 7.5% for August. I don't have the rate yet for September, which just closed out yesterday, but it's going down pretty quickly. However, those who remain unemployed, that could last a long time, and those are the lower paid jobs. Those are the people that we are most concerned with less savings, not as many resources, and it could be a long-term economic impact on those who can withstand it the least. So that's pretty alarming. Let's see. I can tell you how many jobs we added back. Let's see. We added back 7,600 jobs in June, 4,100 jobs in July, and 2,500 jobs in August. So some thousands of jobs are being restored, but yes, we still have lots and lots of people, and it's the people who can really least afford it who are still without jobs. I do not have the numbers of people where they are insecure with their housing because of either mortgage or rent payments. I'll find out.
Thank you, Nancy. Dawn Leslie, you're next.
Thanks. I had a question about Oregon's election integrity. I know there have been some attempts from outside of the United States to interfere with our elections. And of course, we're 33 days, but who's counting, right? 33 days from our election. And in the past, I've been really proud of Oregon and how clean and democratic and verifiable and all that our election is. But I didn't know if any outside forces or any issues targeting Oregon.
I do not personally have information to say that there is or is not. I think there are reasons why sometimes information may not be shared with us because I guess for security reasons. But I do have access to reports because I co-chair basically the IT committee for the legislatures, the Joint Legislative Committee on Information Management and Technology. It's a mouthful, JLC-IMT. And I do get reports when reports are possible to be made public, and I have received no reports on attacks against our system in Oregon. But there's no reason to think they're not trying. It's just that we're repelling them right now. But some of the scare tactics that are coming out of the federal government make me just absolutely dismayed. We have had not only no widespread voter fraud, statistically, it's almost no voter fraud out of all these years we've been doing our elections this way. So I'm just gonna have to, I don't know, we're all waiting to see, but no, Dawn, I haven't received any information that there have been attacks up to now. Or they were repelled. Maybe there were and they shut them down.
Thank you. Or it may just be that they're really focused on swing states, which would be strategic.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I ask, Nancy, who does have that information? If you don't have access to it, who in the state?
The executive branch will. The Office of the Chief Information Officer, CIO, and then the state police. The state police also works with basically the FBI. I have chaired, I asked for a committee hearing some months ago, before any of this was ever a thing. I asked for a hearing on cybersecurity. And if you're interested, just write to my legislative address and we'll send you the link to the hearing so that you can listen to it. And we had people visiting us from the private sector and from the FBI, as well as from state agencies, to talk to us about what are the threats. One of the things that prompted my inquiry was, we know that there have been ransomware attacks, not only on individual businesses where an individual business had to pay anywhere from a few thousand to several tens of thousands of dollars just to be able to resume their business. And we're talking about small business people. So we had heard about, I had heard about a ransomware attack on a private business, but there have been ransomware attacks on some Oregon cities and counties. And should we be paying ransom? You know, should you or should you not? And there are other state governments across the US that have paid ransom to get back control over, like, their human services department or their transportation department. So anyway, that's why I asked for this public hearing in front of my committee, and I'd be happy to send you a link to it.
Thanks, I'll ask for it. I'll write you and ask for it.
Thank you.
I'd be interested in an economic forecast, Nancy.
Well, it's some people saw it as great news and they were thrilled, and I'm always more cautious and conservative about these things. The economic forecast was a lot better than it was in May. Almost like $2 billion better. That means we lost less money than we thought we were going to lose. A lot of people heard, oh, we're $2 billion better. And that's kind of all they heard. Like, oh, great, we have more money to spend. No, it's just that the size of our problem is much smaller and we can handle it for this year. The thing to be concerned about is, first of all, the economic forecast assumes that the federal government is going to pass another economic stimulus package. Maybe not quite as big as the last one, but a significant economic stimulus package. If that money doesn't happen, or if it doesn't come to Oregon as much as it comes to other states, then the economic forecast is wrong. So that's the first thing. It assumes a nice sized federal stimulus. The second thing that we don't really know is the economic forecast is very inextricably linked with the health forecast. if people don't feel safe going back to their jobs or feel safe going back to restaurants or traveling around Oregon, staying for a few nights, you know, at their favorite lodge somewhere. If people don't feel comfortable because we haven't gotten a hold of knocking down the pandemic, then we'll still have pretty suppressed economic activity. So the sooner we can get the pandemic under control in our state, the better off we are for the economic forecast.
Thanks, that's helpful. Anybody else with questions? It's always such a mystery how we manage to get it all done. Louis, your hand's up.
I'm curious, the unemployment numbers that you mentioned earlier, are those taking into account that some people may not be looking for work right now?
Underemployed and just not reporting? Not necessarily,
Yeah.
because these are the official numbers.
Okay, so that it's mainly counting people who are looking for work.
The number, let me make sure, let me get that back. Yeah, it's coming from the employment department, and yes, that means it's coming off of those who are reporting.
But
Right.
you also mentioned that like the number of people employed is up. So that sounds like it bodes well for the overall.
Right. Right. We're really happy that people are working, but in some cases they're working only some of their hours. There's something I want to share with you. I wrote a note. Let me get it just a second. I got a note from a constituent 3 days ago. It says she's living on visa and borrowing money, quote, but I've only been working about 7 hours a week on average, as most people are still too fearful of being in a gym. That's her work. She's employed by a gym. As most people are still too fearful of being in a gym, and a lot of my clients are senior citizens. So when you think about everybody who is right now underemployed, they're working a few hours, maybe it's helping partially keep food on the table. They're still worried as heck. And this one constituent counts as employed, but she's living on borrowed money right now.
Mary Leontovich, your hand's up.
Yeah, is there anything we haven't asked about that you are keeping track of or are concerned with right now, or maybe happy about that you think we should be, you know, thinking about or asking about?
Well, I'll tell you, the pandemic, the wildfire, how we recover from a wildfire this massive over the entire state. It's not like someone in Lane County where we had this horrible fire can now just commute for employment in another county. So many homes were lost. That on top of the pandemic, I am just concerned for how stressful the next several months will be on all of us. I think we've survived the summer pretty well because we could be outside. I have visited with a few friends at a distance. One is a neighbor who lives a few blocks away, and she will come, she'll talk at one end of the driveway and I'll be at the other end. And we had dinner with some good friends, and we sat at 2 different tables in the backyard. We can't do that in the winter. So I am concerned about people's emotional and mental well-being once the weather turns and we're not able to do some of these kinds of activities. It's either that or people will start doing risky things and visiting with each other inside. And then that will have probably a pretty negative impact on our rate of COVID-19 infection. So I'm really worried about that. On the other hand, here's one thing that I am so pleased to see: the number of community organizations, and in some cases, not even through an organization. I was looking in the newspaper at a community refrigerator, or just like the little free libraries, the little free food places. If you're hungry, here's where there's some food. I am just so amazed at how people are helping each other. And in some cases it's friends, and in some cases it doesn't matter. They're just helping others in the community. That is remarkable. It's happening at a greater degree than I've ever seen it before. So that's good news.
Jerry Finnegan, your hand's up.
Yes, it is. I just want to ask Nancy if it'd be possible to introduce a bill in the legislature to say, let's move on to 2021. We're done with this year.
Advance the calendar a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, Jerry. You know, I just love I just love your perspective. What a great idea. Yeah. Yeah.
We do get to fast forward 1 hour pretty soon.
Good
Well,
point, Louie.
That's fall back, isn't it? You lose an
is.
hour.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
somebody told me the wrong thing then.
Any other questions for Representative Nathanson? Thank you so much for spending time with us this evening. We really appreciate your caring and your continued advocacy on the behalf of your constituents.
Thank you all.
You're welcome to stay with us for the rest of the evening, but you're not required by any stretch of the imagination.
I'm going to stay for a few minutes, but I've got some dinner heating in the oven.
All right. Let's see. So